Evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be able to stand up and share after my brother, Tuma. It's an important thing for us to be able to speak to each other, even though there's so many social networks and so many different forms of communication that are available to us. Rarely do we get the opportunity to sit face to face and exchange ideas. So it's something I don't take for granted. So the few minutes that I'll speak to you about 1873, I want to thank you beforehand just for listening to me and for engaging in conversation. So we've, all of us in our various realms, been trying to figure out how to make Africa more prosperous, how to create a situation where the African people will be able to achieve their hopes and aspirations. And we started talking, Tuma and I and others, about what the history is, what the historical appreciation we should have for Africans and our journey. And it struck us that when you look back into the 1800s, you find that there was a moment in history where things were not perfect in Africa. There was much going on. There was slavery, and there was people stealing from each other, and human beings engaging as they normally do. The difference, though, in 1873 is that there were no borders. So if one had a business selling yams in Uganda, you could take your yams all the way across the continent to Nigeria and sell those yams to someone without ever having to speak to anyone in government or having to cross any border. Learn the language of the people you want to sell to, and you can sell. And you can negotiate terms and agree on terms and then conduct business. And when you start looking at the history, you find that there were actually corporate entities in Africa at the time. There's a guy named Jaja Rupopo, who happens to be a favorite historical actor of mine, who was in the Niger Delta. This guy was a palm oil trader. He used to be a slave and decided at some point that he wanted to organize all of the palm traders in the region so as to corporatize the activity of palm trading, give himself more leverage as a business person, and create the opportunity for himself and for others to be prosperous in 1873. And he ended up negotiating with the British to be able to supply palm oil. He was the biggest palm oil trader in the world. Started supplying palm oil directly to Europe without using European intermediaries. Started buying ships that he would then use to ship the palm oil to Europe, which is a phenomenal thing if you think way back to 1873, that's what was happening. In many ways, what he aspired to is what many Africans aspire to now. And when you look back at colonialism and the advent of colonialism, one of the major obstacles to expression was the creation of these borders that were created in the Berlin Conference in 1885. And in each and every liberation struggle across the continent that led to our liberation as a continent, no one challenged the borders. So it's a very interesting kind of phenomenon that that which you complain about and galvanize whole movements around change, at some point it becomes inconvenient to change because there's a political interest in some smaller aggregation. So if I happen to be from a country called Zimbabwe, which now is called Zimbabwe, which is called Rhodesia, and I had a political interest in becoming the governing power of that country, then of course I wouldn't have challenged those borders because that wouldn't make sense from a political standpoint. But as business people, it doesn't make sense to have an economy of 10 million when you could have an economy of 1 billion. So right now, China is the preeminent power of the world, not because they're the most developed nation, of all nations. In fact, they're one of the less developed nations in the world. They have many of the same types of problems that you find in the poverty-stricken continent that we know as Africa. The difference is that they have the ability to aggregate over a billion people. And because they have that ability, they can determine the actions of corporate actors all over the world because they protect and control a sizable market. Without that ability, it's very difficult to develop it. You know, over the last 20 years, China has moved from some number of development, which made them firmly entrenched in the so-called third world, to being, if not the indispensable power now in the world, but certainly one of the top three. And so how would Africa be able to itself develop into a major force? Well, if you were to get rid of the borders, deal with the problems that come with doing that, and be able to trade, certainly African nations, African companies would be able to benefit from being able to sell in a market that would be over a billion people. And that in itself is a fantastic thing. So as business people, we felt that by taking the name 1873, that would be an expression of the universal aspiration, hope that people all over the world have to do better in every generation, to be able to feed themselves and their children, and to be able to enjoy the prosperity as is experienced in that generation. And we Africans are no different than any other people. We would like to do the same thing. But the lessons of how to do that may be deep in our history, and may be a challenge in terms of how we have chosen to constitute ourselves as nations, and therefore either expanded or limited our opportunities to make an economic difference, which ultimately is the way human beings express themselves in terms of their hopes and aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I didn't know that the name came from you. I knew it today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawere. We appreciate the talk that you had with us about the book. So, ladies and gentlemen, the book that we're speaking about today, Bridge to a Prosperous Africa. We have it over here. Some of us that came a little bit early already have purchased the book, and they've already taken some pictures with the author, and after the author has signed them. So the book is going for 150 rands. We can get it over the desk here, and we can get the author to sign it for us, and we can get a picture with him as well. Then when it comes to the 1873 network joining, so much has been said about it, and we have got annual memberships for 1,000 rands. Then we also have got a monthly membership that goes at 100 rands. So there are so many things that, as I alluded to in my introduction of the network to us, that there are so many things that we stand to benefit. So let us aggregate one another, let us come together, let us collaborate, let us share experiences as we tackle the problems that we all face as individuals, as businesses in our various areas of working. So ladies and gentlemen, this is where our formal program ends, but we are free to network, speak to one another, get to know one or two, not even one or two, get to know more than 10 people here, because we need to network, we need one another. So let's get to talk to one another, and we are free to partake of the snacks. We have got some juices, we have got some wine, am I right? No wine, okay. So we have got some soft drinks and some water over there, and some snacks. Let us partake, let us mix and mingle. And those who haven't managed to get the book, let us come and get the book over here. Thank you so much.